sure to give Mr. Black's picture and send it to those people.
Yes, sir.
But I think it's a consensus of the board. We move ahead with the letter, letting people know they're in violation and what steps will be taken if they do not take
Yes,
upon
sir.
themselves to make the cleanup.
Can we ask Mr. Fincham to make the letter a little more forceful? Because they have 30 days after they get the letter, right?
It does not have to be 30 days.
Oh, that would be good. Okay, because
We gave, I believe it was 15 with the
15
property.
on the property back here.
Yes.
Okay, is that fair, Mr. Chairman? 15, because we need to accelerate the process as much since we didn't do this all year.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
You want a motion for that?
Yeah, we'll just go, yeah, just go ahead.
I'll make a motion, we start the letter process on the properties that we have, and then the ones Mr. Black selects for his district.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Thomas, that we move ahead with the letters with a 15-day notice of violation, giving them 15 days to get it cleaned up. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion's carried. Information on calendar items, you want to do that now to get that out of the way? Because we do have a closed meeting.
We have the ribbon cutting, Mr. Chairman, at 1:45 State Fair this Friday. Obviously, the fair runs all the way through Sunday night, the 8th, right before our next board meeting. We have Bowling Green Harvest Festival the 20th of October, a Frog Level Festival the following Saturday, and then 6:30 we have the RACSB Legislative Get-Together. And where is that?
Cross street from the high school.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be at their building. That's what I thought. I want to make sure. So
Okay.
those are the things upcoming. And now, of course, your work session on the radio system in early November.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Cully? Board will take a 30-minute recess. Caroline County Board of Supervisors meeting. The next item on the agenda is public comments. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to address the board on any issue that's not on a public hearing this evening, please come forward and state your name and your voting district. Is there anyone who would like to address the board on any issue this evening that's not included in a public hearing? If so, please come forward and state your name and your voting district. One last call. Is there anyone who would like to address the board this evening on any issue outside of the public hearings that will be held later? Hearing no comment, the public comment period is closed. The next item on the agenda this evening is public hearings. For anyone that may be here for a public hearing, special exception 03-2012, that public hearing has been pulled for 90 days and will not be heard tonight. The next public hearing this evening is special exception 05-2012, Anderson Family Limited Partnership, owner Mark Anderson, applicant. Mr. Fincher.
Mr. Chairman, your first public hearing tonight is SPEX 05-2012, Anderson Family Limited Partnership owner, Mark Anderson applicant, requesting a special exception permit in accordance with Article 17, Section 13, and Article 9, Section 3.3 on tax map 56D-A-17. They're requesting a special exception permit for a cabinet shop to be located in an existing structure. The property is located at 16392 Richmond Turnpike in the Mattaponi District. The comprehensive plan designation, this property is in the Bowling Green Milford Community Plan area and designated as planned development. The applicant is requesting a special exception for a cabinet manufacturing shop in an existing building located on the west side of 16,392 Richmond Turnpike. The front of the property is currently being used as a convenience store, and the addition to the rear has an auto repair shop. The cabinet shop will be located in a vacant space to the rear of the building. The proposed use of this facility is for cabinet manufacturing and will be occupied by approximately 1 week out of every month by one person who would be employed in the manufacture of cabinets. There would be very limited public use of this facility or retail use of this facility. It's primarily a small-scale manufacturing operation, which is allowed by a special use permit. Planning Commission held its public hearing on this request as July 18, 2012 meeting. Nobody spoke in either favor or opposition to the request, and the Planning Commission forwarded this request to the board with a recommendation of approval subject to the conditions that are contained in the staff report. And with that, I'll address any questions that the board may have.
Board members have questions of Mr. Fincham before we open the public hearing.
Just one brief one. Mr. Fincham, is the applicant here?
No.
No. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, Mr. Fincham, I don't hear any other questions. We will now declare the public hearing open for special exception 05-2012, Anderson Family Limited Partnership. Is there anyone who would like to address the board either in favor of or in opposition to the special exception request? Is there anyone who would like to address the board in opposition to or in favor of the special exception request? One last call. Is there anyone who would like to address the board either in favor of or in opposition to the special exception request? Hearing no comment, public hearing is declared closed. Board have questions or comments, or how does the board wish to?
One question again, Mr. Fincham, if I may. You mentioned very little retail in the suggested conditions. Are they the conditions that the applicant had agreed to abide by, or are those just what you're suggesting?
Condition number 5.
No, I'm saying, but it says suggested conditions. Is that a suggestion, or is that a requirement?
If you approve that with these conditions, it
Then
would
you
be a
want us-
requirement.
Okay, you want us to have these conditions, okay. And number 5 does say no retail business at all.
That's correct.
Okay, okay. My only concern is this is the Gulf Station right back here, which we've worked with VDOT on the traffic issues, people going in and out. If it's only one employee once a week, I don't really see any problem. So I will make a motion for special exception 05-2012 to be approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Thomas, seconded by Mr. Seeley. Is there discussion on the motion? All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion is carried. The next public hearing is proposed adoption of a resolution authorizing the issuance of a not-to-exceed $1,085,504 general obligation school bond, Series 2012 of the County of Caroline, Virginia, to be sold to the Virginia Public School Authority and providing for the form and details thereof.
We have a representative from Davenport will be here to try to answer questions, and then I'll answer
Okay.
what I can.
Okay.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good to see everybody this evening. Courtney Rogers sends his regards. What you have before you tonight, just to make sure we're clear before you do open the public hearing, are 2 separate resolutions, both relating to financing for the new elementary school. The first, which is I'll call it roughly $1 million resolution, is tied to what's called a qualified school construction bond financing. And that basically is a 0% financing that will be issued in place of some interim financing that you have outstanding right now for the school. So that isn't new money per se. It simply is providing you what will be a 0% or near 0% interest rate loan, as opposed to a 3% loan from the state that would come in several years. So the smaller of the 2 resolutions is not new money per se for the school. It's simply the ability to borrow at 0% through a very special program, and hence it's a little bit of strange dollar amount. That's just simply what was given to you by the state, which is who sort of sets the allocation of how those dollars are divided. The second resolution is indeed the completion funding for the new elementary school. It'll provide $1.5 million to give you a total of $10.5 million for the new elementary schools, I believe you've discussed in the past. That will happen through the Virginia Public School Authority, through their typical semi-annual pool program. That's issued here in the coming weeks at a market interest rate. We expect it to be 3.5% or below. It's a fixed rate through time, and it's a program we believe you've participated in the past. So that's the slightly larger financing. I believe it's $1.6 million and change in your resolution. The difference between that $1.5 million that you need to complete the project and the $1.6 million simply covers the issuance costs, and the state, meaning VPSA, likes to have a contingency in there for when they sell the bonds. They need to sell the bonds at a discount, which just depends on what the market is that day. That gives them that contingency to do so. So the upshot is you're basically providing the full $10.5 million for the elementary school. The first smaller financing simply is a sort of replacement financing, terms out about $1 million of that project at 0% instead of 3%. The second gives you the balance, meaning $1.5 million, to complete the elementary school at a market rate, which we believe will be 3.5% or below. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Let me just make sure I understand. We got $6 million of QSCAB money initially for the elementary school. So if I'm hearing you right, this is now giving us $7 million of QSCAB money,
That's correct.
and we've already borrowed $3 million interim financing.
That's right. That's right. And then this $1 million will replace $1 million of that $3 million. So you'll have $2 million left outstanding.
Okay,
on
that's
that
what I
interim
wanted
note.
to make sure. And then the other 1.5 is the completion of the $10.5 million that we need to finish, because then we'd have 7 and 2, because you're saying that million of the $3 million. So we're going to take $1 million. We're going to take that $1 million and pay down part of the $3 million.
That's correct.
Well, that's my point. I mean, we're going to take that. We're going to pay down of the 3. We're going to pay down $1 million of it from the QSCAB money.
Yep, roughly speaking.
Okay, so it's not $11.5 million we have at the end of this. It's still $10.5 million.
That's correct. Yep, you're only going to have $10.5 million for the project.
So we should really look at this first $1 million as refinancing part of that $3 million.
That's a very good way to look at it. Yep, absolutely.
Exactly.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, thank you.
Can we do both public hearings together?
We'll declare the public hearing open on the proposed adoption of a resolution authorizing the issuance of a not-to-exceed $1,085,504 general obligation school bond. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this resolution? Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the approval of this resolution? Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this approval of this resolution? Hearing no comment, the public hearing is declared closed. How does the board wish to dispose of this issue? Are there any other questions?
Move for adoption of the resolution, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made by Mr. Thomas, seconded by Mr. Black, that we approve the...
I know we look just alike.
I saw Mr. Black going, heading to the microphone, and I didn't see you. All right, Mr. Taylor, sorry about that. The adoption of a resolution authorizing the issuance of a not-to-exceed $1,085,504 general obligation school bond. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. And the motion is carried. The next public hearing this evening would be the proposed adoption of a resolution authorizing the issuance of a not-to-exceed $1,630,000 general obligation school bond of the County of Caroline, Virginia, to be sold to the Virginia Public School Authority and providing for the school form and details thereof. Are there questions? I think we had the explanation in the previous presentation. We'll declare the public hearing open on the adoption of a resolution authorizing the issuance of a not-to-exceed $1,630,000 general obligation school bonds. Is anyone like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the approval of this resolution? Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the approval of this resolution? One last call. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the approval of this resolution? Hearing no comments, the public hearing is declared closed. As the board wish to, do you have any other questions, or how do you wish to dispose of this issue? I'll catch you, Mr. Taylor, this time. Go ahead.
I move the adoption of the proposed adoption of the resolution authorizing the issuance but not to exceed 1.630 million of general obligation school bonds of the County of Caroline to be sold to the Virginia Public School Authority.
Second.
Motion made, Mr. Taylor, seconded by Mr. Black, that we approve the adoption of the resolution. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. And the motion is carried. Oh,
I vote nay.
okay, division of the House. Mr. Black, can you vote?
Explain if you like.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Underwood?
Aye.
Mr. Seeley?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
I vote nay. I've been asked by several constituents to send a message to the chief executive of the school that our public financing is not socialism, and they didn't appreciate him calling the school socialism. So my vote is a protest to that.
And I vote aye. And the motion is approved. Under new business, review of FY 2012-13 funding for George Washington Regional Commission. Who's going to handle that one?
I was asked to bring this before the board by Mr. Black. It evidently came up at a commission meeting just recently, some discussion of the county's level funding over the last few years of the commission, and then given the fact that we were just granted a amount of money for the Lady Smith park and ride. So Alan prepared a memo for you. You can see that we funded the last couple of years at $10,000. The request this year is for $15,670.
Chairman,
Mr. Black?
I got from the commission the balance sheets of the last 3 fiscal years, contributions from the member counties, and I'm going to pass these out to you guys to see. If you guys take a look at that, you will see that in Caroline, we have undercut the commission by a total of basically roughly around $32,000 over the past several years. And that is, it is the second highest to Stafford. And if you look at there, Stafford County actually, at our last meeting, there was a little discussion between Stafford County and Spotsylvania County about the fees. Stafford County is the county that handles insurance and payroll for the commission, which is basically about a $40,000 value. So when you see that Stafford County, for example, has undercut the commission by, say, $12,000, the reality is they're taking on the $40,000, liability for the payroll and so forth. I didn't actually know that Mr. Ware was coming tonight. I had it put on the agenda because there was discussion whether, I don't know what the rules of the commission are, there was discussion about the possibility of member counties not being able to vote if they didn't pay the full fees. Spotsylvania was pretty adamant about wondering what the reason and purpose of having the fees was if certain counties didn't have to pay it. And there was a debate at that night between Spotsylvania and Stafford regarding this. And I just feel like, as Mr. Ware presented earlier tonight with the GWR Ride Connect, the energy program, as well as other programs that they have given to us in the past, the Ladysmith parking now, that we could afford to pay the other $7,376 that we would owe the GWRC. So that's.
From what I gather here, from this information, Mr. Black, you've shared, hopefully there would be enough votes to approve such a motion, because 3 over the 5 have not fully funded for the last since 2009, 11, 12, and 13.
And you're right, and I mean, numbers are one of the things, and I agree with you. If you look at like King George numbers this year, but they undercut the commission by $1,000.
But they were $3,000 less requested from them. So I mean, I think this is all material, good to look at, and I appreciate it. Any other discussion?
Well, I guess my concern, and I do understand Mr. Black's concern, and it's good to fully fund them, but I think this is just a result of the economic situation, not only in Caroline County, but in the other areas that are part of the commission as well. And if you go back and you look, you will see that, there's no real consistency as far as full funding. The different counties, sometimes they fully fund, sometimes they don't. It just kind of depends on the situation that they're in economically at the time. The other thing that concerns me is we are into the budget cycle, and I really have a concern about adjusting the funding in the middle of the budget cycle because I'm concerned about the message that we're sending. If departments feel like we're going to adjust their funding in the middle of the budget session, then we're probably going to end up with other requests as well. And I guess the other thing was tonight, Mr. Ware said, I'm not asking for money. So, I mean, that says to me that the commission is working and it's able to function and it's doing what it does. But I do think that maybe in the future, when we look at our budget next year, we look at that and maybe if there's any way we can fully fund them, because, we've benefited from them, but certainly every county that's involved benefits from them as well. They may not qualify for all the programs that we qualify for, but then there are programs that they qualify that we don't. We're not a part of FAMPO, and we get nothing. We've even tried to become a member of FAMPO and not been able to make that happen. So that's why, that's my concern right now. It's just in the middle of the budget session, and we would have to take that money from somebody else because there are no new funds right now.
Other discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
can I respond to that?
Please.
One of the things you had mentioned the whole thing is the percent being undercut. I mean, I understand if you look at for example King George, they're undercutting, but the percent that we're undercutting compared to other counties is probably the largest percent. And then the other argument is return on investment. When we looked at the budget this year, we were talking about certain departments and giving them overtime because they bring more revenue into the county. This is a very, very small expense, and the return on investment, as Mr. Ware said, we were looking at $270,000 on investment, return on investment of some of the stuff that was helpful to the county. So, I mean, that to me is pretty important.
Okay. Other questions? Comments? If you want to make a motion, Mr. Black.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and do it. I'll make the motion to fully fund the George Washington Regional Commission for the 2012-2013 budget year.
Why don't we look at this at the 6-month budget review cycle, because that gives us a chance to look at everybody, if we want to look at everybody. I mean, we all make good points. It's good to fully fund them. We fund them the same amount for the last 4 years. And this is the first time they came back and said, fully fund us. Mr. Taylor makes a good point of, we'll do this for everybody. Why don't we just, they're not going to, you got $60-some thousand unencumbered balance, he said. Why don't we look at it at our 6-month time point where we have a chance to go over things? And I think that's fair to everybody. And
I guess my question is, I don't know that anyone, let me make sure I understand what really transpired in your requesting this, Mr. Black. Is the fact that at a meeting, there were some members of the commission, I believe King George was one of the members of the commission, that questioned why Caroline County was not fully funding the commission. Is that correct?
There was a previous meeting at which that happened, yes, but I'm referring to the latest meeting. The latest meeting was, King George was not represented at the latest meeting.
Right. But I don't know that Mr. Ware was here this evening and certainly not trying to say he shouldn't have, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but to me he indicated, I'm not here for asking money. I'm not here asking money this evening. And so I just don't know why, if it had been a problem, because the budget process went on from probably March through, was not approved until the end of June. And I didn't hear anything about this until probably after July 1. And I think they were given an indication as to what their funding was going to be. It was going to be level funding what we had last year, which was $10,000. And I don't know whether staff received any complaints about that level of funding or not. If they really had a concern with the fact that we did not fund them the $7,000 that they had asked for. To me, they should have done it in the budget process and not after the budget has been approved, and now we either have to pull from our unencumbered balance or take money from another department or another line item or another category in order to pay that $7,000. I'm in agreement that, yes, we look at their budget request next year to look at fully funding. If we look at every 6 months, look at everybody's budget, I think we really get ourselves into a pretty bad predicament, whereas people are going to be coming in here and we're going to be sort of budgeting on a 6-month basis. And I don't believe this board wants to get itself in a position where we're only budgeting on a 6-month basis. We budget on a 12-month basis, and that's it.
I guess my only comment on that, and I do agree with at the 6-month mark, looking at where we are budget-wise, but we did the same thing with property maintenance. We went in, we didn't budget any money in property maintenance at all, and we've allocated, we don't even know how much money yet. I know we've sent letters, but we're going to allocate funds to property maintenance. So we have in the middle of the budget year that we didn't budget anything, gone in and done something a little different. I understand. I served for 1 year on the commission, and do understand the value that they provide and some of the resources that we as Caroline don't have. But I would like to wait for the 6-month mark, see where we are budget-wise, and make a decision incrementally.
You do understand, I hope we all understand that the funding that is paid in by the counties, most of the things they do for Caroline and other counties as well, most of it is done through grants that are provided through some other agency. I don't see how they can do all the studies and analysis based on what they get just from the localities. I think we're part of his staff. Mr. Ware, you can help us out if you'd like to on that particular issue as to...
And again, this purely is coincidence. I came the same night that you were having this on the agenda. But just to clarify that a little bit, as far as, yes, we are grant funded, and we received $75,000 from the state. But as I was trying to explain to you a little while ago, every dollar we get, we generally have to match. On our budget this year, we're receiving around $182,000 in local match. Every dollar of that is being used to supplement the other programs we're bringing in for GW Ride Connect, our rural transportation, our FAMPO, as well as our homeless management and information system. So every bit of it is going to local match.
I understand. What part of, how much, or what percentage goes into FAMPO?
Probably around 50%. But then again,
We get some of the benefit from FAMPO.
but they also put the lion's share of the local match in too, though.
I understand that, and I understand that they get 50% of, FAMPO gets it, and they put a lion's share. I understand that. But we don't get any benefit from FAMPO, other than I think you indicated the $5,000 came out of a $58,000 grant or something that was provided.
You get benefit of all of the rural transportation money, the $58,000. That can't be used for FAMPO sources at all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate you.
Sure.
Okay. Motion on the floor by Mr. Black. Was there a second? Mr. Seeley, did you ever second it? I don't know if anybody seconded it. No one seconded the motion.
Well, I interrupted him right after.
All right, but is anyone going to second the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll be willing to accept what Mr. Thomas had said and what Mr. Seeley had said, as well as after the 6 months.
Okay. All right, so the motion is made.
He's going to withdraw his motion.
No, he's going to amend his motion.
I'll amend the motion so that we look at this in 6 months.
Second.
Motion been made by Mr. Black, seconded by Mr. Seeley, that we will revisit this issue in 6 months to look at increasing the contribution at the 6 month review.
Right.
Yeah. At the 6 month review.
Is there a question?
Question.
Okay, I guess, my thing is, again, I just don't want to see us doing budgets on 6 months because that could be the case with everybody. And they've not come, the George Washington Commission has not come and formally said we're in need of additional funding and we would like for you to fully fund your budget. I can tell you, that request has not been made. The idea that we were not fully funded basically came from one of the counties that are involved in this, and they were just basically making a statement. As I said, there are at least two other localities besides us that are not fully funded. I just think we need to just look at it at the beginning of next year's budget cycle like we do everything else. We receive some benefit from them, but everybody receives benefit from them. So that's my point.
Any other comments? All right. All in favor of this motion, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
And the motion is dead for the lack of a majority. All right, number 11, discussion of need to end practice of local aid to the Commonwealth. This will be interesting. Number 11. I asked staff to put this on the agenda. The state, of course, brags about the over $448 million surplus they have at the end of the year, but part of that is our $144,000 that we had to give back to the state under the aid to localities, and now it's aid from localities to state. And so my concern is that if you've got $448 million, you should be able to relieve Caroline County and the other counties throughout the state of their share of this of the budget. In our case, $144,000. And I would like to see us to write a letter or pass a resolution asking the governor to reconsider this issue in the upcoming budget, whereas we would be relieved of that financial burden. $144,000 is a little more than a half a cent in the real estate tax for Caroline County.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Seeley?
During the budget process at the state, all of the entities that are paying back funds or were interested in being funded, there was actually a formula passed at the end of the General Assembly session that actually articulated what would happen with any funds that were in excess of the budget. And I saw the letters, and I know that VACO was saying that we should be saying we get the money back, but they were part of that process. Part of that formula is some of that money's got to go back to the rainy day fund. It's like $58 million. There was a good portion of money put out in education that a lot of localities got, and we were one of them. We got an additional, at the end, $350,000 in addition in education funds that was part of the budget. That some of this now has to be encumbered in part of the rainy day fund and excess budget that they have to keep the bond rating down. I spent time on the phone with both the delegates, talked to Bobby Orrick last night, Margaret Ranson today, and Senator McDougal over the weekend, and they're saying that localities can get this relief, but we need to actually go down to the General Assembly this winter and actually ask this to be a relief in the biennium review. But there was a formula that actually takes care of those funds, and we actually received a lot of funds in excess from the excess budget that we got here in Caroline that we took back. So I don't agree with us saying the state's got a $300 or $400 million surplus. $50 million's ours. We got a portion of the original budget. If we want to be relieved from this, we need to work through the General Assembly, as does VACO, and say, hey, now that the budget looks better, I think it's time to review the formula that the General Assembly came up with.
First of all, I didn't say they had a $448 million. They said they had a $448 million surplus, and I'm only going on what they said they had. Now, I would assume that when they talk about a $448 million surplus, they have included into their numbers all of the encumbered amounts that they would have put in place. My point is this, And I realize it didn't start just in the last couple of years. It started during the Tim Kaine administration. That localities, in all the years I've been dealing with this, it was always state aid to localities. We always expected money, or we always were getting money from them. And during Tim Kaine's administration, yes, they then set up the process of state aid or aid from localities to state. And we had to send money back every year to the state. Or we had to determine where the state would cut funding to offset this amount of money that we owed to the state every year. All I'm saying is, we did send a letter saying, now, we probably need to be there in the wintertime as well, but I think they need to be put on notice that we are going to expect them to try to do something in the budget next year that will relieve localities of this aid from localities to state. Doesn't make sense. Absolutely doesn't make sense.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Underwood.
my only comment and to my colleague is that the $345,000 that came back to the schools still came from the taxpayers of Caroline County. And across, it wasn't as if we didn't pay taxes and we were not part of creating that surplus. So we've given the additional funds to the schools through our taxes. So in fact, they do have a surplus based on their 448 number, 448 million. I don't see an issue with asking for 144,000 back. That's my position. We paid them. We paid the money.
My concern too is that, they give us money and then they ask us to give it back. I mean, so our budget is based on the funds that we get. So I would agree that may not do any good, but I think we ought to at least communicate to them that because they have such a surplus at this time, and we are dealing with our financial situation.
Right.
May not do any good, but if you don't ask, I guarantee you won't get anything if you don't ask for it.
And don't get me wrong, the governor in his last budget presentation, he reduced the amount that we were paid back to the state by a certain percentage, which certainly helped Caroline County. And he's proposed in the next budget that that number be decreased even further. But I just think it needs to be eliminated. I mean, that $144,000 would go a long way in Caroline County to help us fund other needs that we have in Caroline County. Mr. Thomas, you had a comment.
Yes, I just want to say, I do agree with Mr. Seeley, and I think the rest of the board that says we need to lobby the state legislatures in I guess in the spring when they start the budget process. But my point is maybe a little different. Is we're funding the rainy day fund, and from where I sit and where I've been living, it's been raining for the last 4 years. Our budgets and revenues have been going down. I don't see why we can't have some of that money back. So I would think, we can say that in our letter, we understand the economic climate. The county's been hit hard. It's now starting to come back. The Commonwealth's coming back. Could you relieve us of this debt or this bill? And then we still lobby in both ways. I understand what you're saying, Mr. Seeley, is we want to be nice to the people that are giving us the money, and I understand that, and we will.
And nobody said the letter has to be nasty and mean. I mean,
Oh, no,
all
I'm
we're
just saying.
saying is the resolution needs to be written
We need to say that.
that indicates to them that we
would like
want to
not
be
to-
relieved of this obligation that they have placed on us that hadn't been placed on us in the past. I mean, that's all I'm asking.
Well, I am saying it.
Mr. Steele, you had something else to say or not?
Well, I'm just saying that at this juncture, the formula that was agreed to and the bond rating predicates on the rainy day fund being paid back X amount, as Bobby Orrick said, constitutional amendment that they have to put back at a minimum 10% every year. Some of these funds, and what I'm saying is that we need to lobby and not just, we want 144,000 back, is that there's a budget review cycle coming up mid-year. It's a biennium budget. I think that what we need to do is talk to the legislature and say, look, here's what we paid. What's the reduction next year? Does anybody remember what next year's reduction is? Because I don't remember.
I don't know, but I think it probably reduces Caroline County share to in the 130s or 120s, something like that. It's
We can't
Can I hear you, Fran?
You just come up.
Each year they come up with the reduction, the 60 million, now down to 45 million, and it goes down. Each year it seems to go down. The amount that we are being charged with is going up. So we started out at 120 some thousand, we're up to almost 145,000, and every year I get the sheet from them, it's more and more, even though the cut has been coming down.
Looks like it's 10%,
That makes
it's going from 50 to 45, so probably 10% reduction.
So, again, no one is saying that the resolution has to be mean-spirited. I
Okay.
just believe that that if we make two efforts, two stabs at it, and let them know that we feel like that is now time to relieve us of this obligation. And yes, I think we need to be down at the General Assembly this year, asking for this obligation to be lifted completely, and not only just this year, but in years to come. The formula that you're speaking of, yes, VACO was at the table, but VACO was at the table talking about the budget numbers that was presented then. I don't believe that anyone thought that that was going to be a surplus. I don't think the governor thought that that was going to be a surplus of $448 million when the budget was approved last year.
That's probably true.
Right. So, I mean, yes, VACO was there. I won't go to directions of VACO. We were there. But the fact is, we were there in good faith on the numbers that we were told you have. We weren't asked, do you like this idea? We were told the reduction is going to take place. Now, these are the formulas we have to try to work on. And so that's where it goes.
Motion to do letter in order?
Yeah, and I think a resolution maybe, I think a resolution.
I'd like to, are we going to see the resolution?
We can bring it back, yeah.
That's
certainly
fine.
we can.
So you don't need a motion.
All right,
You're
just prepare,
directing staff to
just prepare a resolution and bring it back to the next board meeting, and we'll go from there. All right?
Until the resolution comes.
Thank you. The proposed emergency medical services standby policy. Chief?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening.
Good evening.
I would like to have an open discussion in regard to the EMS standby coverage in Caroline County as well as outside of the county. Currently, the department has no common practice or policy when it comes to answering requests for a dedicated or non-dedicated ambulance at a special event. Our budget, our resources, and our staffing are built around providing emergency response from the 9 stations that we have out into the community within Caroline County. Since my time here, there's been an ever-increasing number of calls to the department from agencies, organizations, governmental entities requesting an ambulance at their event. Okay? When we talk about these things, we're going to talk about ambulance coverage in 2 general categories. A dedicated EMS ambulance, which would be an ambulance and a crew dedicated to that event, like a sporting venue or a concert. That ambulance is going to stage there regardless of what's happening within the rest of the county. A non-dedicated ambulance would be one that would stage at that event, but would be available to respond to any call within the county should they need to be. One of the problems when folks call our office, because we have no policy or no guidance from the board or internally, we get an inconsistent message going out to organizations. Sometimes we'll send you an ambulance. We may ask you for a fee or non-fee. We have both volunteer and career coverage. Some agencies that actually call us say we want a volunteer ambulance to cover our event so that we incur no costs. As the department head, if you need an ambulance, it doesn't matter who's on the truck or not. If you need an ambulance, we'll provide you that coverage within our means. Before you, you have a draft policy. And what I'm asking for the board is for some discussion and consideration of a development of a policy and the leverage of fees associated with that. In the policy you have before you, there's a public section and then a departmental section that outlines how the practice would happen within the department. 2 things I want to cover. Right now, some of the major events that we cover with EMS standbys are high school football games, parks and rec football games. We send ambulances to the NASCAR event in Richmond.
concert venues, Bowling Greens, Harvest Festival, standbys for the sheriff's department should they need those.